Yes.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom. How are you? How are you
Yeah,
guys?
doing well.
Amen, amen. So let me ask this: what was the question you had yesterday?
Oh no. We got. I got an answer. I got the answer for it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's
All right. So in the future, it's always good because depending on where I'm at, and sometimes I'm like traveling and going places or coming back. So if it's like a halakhic type question or hashkafa, just send me a text on it. And sometimes even with certain questions, I also refer to with Rabbi Pinchas. So just having that in mind that that's it's the best way to just to work within the system. It's just like anything that's halakhic or anything like that, just send me a text, just asking the question out, and then it puts me in a position where I could, if I know it off the top of my head, depending on what the question is, I could say it that way, or I could do research, or I could refer to other rabbis and get like multiple opinions on whatever the particular question is. All right.
okay. No, hold on.
Yeah, it's just a system, and it just creates a check and balance, and it's not just by you guys. It's like everybody who has different parts of the world that have students. When there's certain halakhic questions, even if it's something someone knows, we generally try to come together and discuss them, right? In different positions on it or whatnot. But anyways, you guys are fine, so it's okay. But just in general, that's the protocol. So it's not anything directed towards you or anything like that. It's just the normal way that the chief rabbinate wants to deal with those types of things, and it helps me a lot too because I'm still developing, giving rabbinical opinions. You know what I mean? So I want to make sure that everything is correct or whatever. But this particular day is just I couldn't talk. I was just like running around. I had humongous meetings today with very big press outlets, here in Israel, but also around the world, and just talking about yeah, the yeshiva and this. And it's interesting because I've done press in the past, a lot of media in the past, and it's after everything that has happened, it's almost like everything's from the beginning now. So now it's like retelling my story because everything's like mainstream now. You know what I mean? Like, and not saying things weren't mainstream before, but a lot of the media that I was in and dealing with, a lot of it had to do with, well, I mean, it just different stages, but a lot of the media I've done recently, a lot of that had to do with advocating for the state of Israel, for the war, and then also, addressing certain social issues like Black Lives Matters and Kanye and all, and Dave Chappelle's and all these types of things. So I did that. But before that, there were some stories, about like my life and my process, to come to Judaism. And so, like for me, I felt like I was past that. I feel like, all right, that's like old news. But in the real world of media, right? The world doesn't know about any of that. You know what I mean? Like they don't know. I mean, okay, you have Story, Jerusalem Post, different publications, but like mainstream media, like I've never given my story like on NBC or ABC or what I'm saying, like Fox, these types of things, JNS, so that's what's going to be happening, and with God's will, and so those were the meetings today. So I couldn't really answer anything. And in fact, I like came to a meeting super early, and it was a whole big crazy day today. So I had to like go from one side of Jerusalem to another side. So, anyways, we're here now, and everyone's excited. People are excited for Yeshiva Sanhedrin. It's a very interesting conversation because people are asking me like, what are you doing now? So many things. I say, well, I launched the yeshiva a little while ago, like over a year ago, but I haven't really formalized it up until recent. And the main focus, when I tell people the main focus of the yeshiva is to attract people who have the ability to make a tremendous impact in the world, or people who want to make a tremendous impact in the world. Right? They may not be there yet, but they want to get there, and that. And so the way that we get to that place of supporting them is through the text. right? It's through the text and Baruch Hashem, we have thousands of years of recorded text from all over the world, dealing with all different types of perspectives and different time periods. So we're pretty good in terms of being able to be able to be able to see issues and then be able to find literature that's connected to our tradition to deal with that. So, as you guys know, the big focus, for the yeshiva, the big focus for the yeshiva is dealing with like a lot of the issues that we are faced in the world right now, right? So, like, one of the issues that we're dealing with is health, right? People's health care and their quality of health, whether it's mental health, physical health, but healthcare is a big deal. We also have issues of racism, right? And bigotry and various forms of discrimination. We have wars going on in the world right now. There's places where there's famine, all types of inequities. And so the way that we assess this issue is from the sole perspective that there's an improper education that the world has received about who they are. And this improper education that they've received about who they are is this perception that they are a physical body. And that's all they are. And the spirit of a person, I'm going to keep talking about it because it's such a big point. The spirit of a person is a product of engagement into society. It's a product. It's a response to virtue and these types of things. And so, because of that thinking process, the inner aspect of the human being is not even acknowledged. And because the human being is not acknowledged, right? Because the human being is not acknowledged, the essence of the human being, we have an external framework of reality. And that external framework of reality does not allow us to deal with our health in a proper way because the foods that we eat, the information we receive, all these things that make us who we are, right? All those things that make us who we are in essence, is influenced by the soul, right? And so because we don't have that knowledge, we have no discretion on really the foods that we eat, how they're created. By default, being Jewish, we have to eat kosher and we have to have a kavana of the holiness of the food, right? So we get saved. But the vast majority of the world, and even Jewish world, does not identify in this way, and does not connect themselves in this way. And so because of that, there's a lot of health issues. And then as it relates to, discrimination, bigotry, and all these other issues, this is because the human being is not connected to any form of their own inner essence. And so because of this lack that they're feeling, right? Because it's like some. I remember when my parents got really into the blood type diet. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but I don't know. My parents are they're very innovative people, very forward thinking people, and they were introduced. Actually, it was from someone from the Kabbalah Center, and so my mom actually got introduced to a nutritionist. His name was Dr. Wagner. He passed away, but he worked with a lot of celebrities. That was his main thing. And his biggest thing was the blood type diet, right? And the whole thing with the blood type diet, and basically the theory around it is that every the human body gives off certain chemicals, right? And these chemicals allow the human body to kind of like sustain itself, function, but at the same time, the human body is also missing a lot of things, right? It's also missing certain things, and so the diet that we have is supposed to make up for that imbalance, right? So I'm a B blood type, right? And B blood types, it's a whole story. Certain foods we eat, don't eat, whatever. So we were really into it. But one of the things that really I got out of it, one of the things I got out of it, and I still hold by it, you know what I mean? Like, even though now I've been in Israel and I've gained a lot of weight since I've been in Israel, but, even here, Israel, it's not as, it's not as, it's not as It's a lot of chicken, fried chicken, stuff that's not the best for B blood type. You know what I mean? Like B blood type is supposed to eat lamb, other things. Anyways, turkey, delicacies, right? They have thinner blood clots, right? So they're like even the workouts are different. Like the way B blood types are supposed to do more meditative, more stretching, more like yoga, Pilates, as where O blood types have thicker blood clots and they need more rigorous workouts to get the blood circulating, right? You hear people there say, "Oh, I got to get the blood circulating." Usually, those people have thicker blood clots, and they're probably more likely O blood type and these types of things. So it's a big sign. But the point is that on a given day, you could feel depressed, you could feel anxiety, you could feel weak, you could feel sick because of your diet, right? So there's something lacking. And so, because you're not dealing with it correctly, you can wake up and be in the worst mood. And then someone says something, or someone sends you a text, or someone cuts you off on the road, or someone didn't do something the way you told them to do it, or whatever, right? And then you're just irate and you're upset and you're frustrated, right? And that has to do with the lack that you were already feeling, right? A lot of times we get into arguments and we have problems with people because we just weren't feeling good on that day. We were feeling bad about ourselves, or we were frustrated about something that had nothing to do with this issue that I'm dealing with now, but we confront that. So in that way, this is the condition of the human being. Because the human being does not acknowledge that it has a soul, and it does not function in the frame of it having a soul, because of that, the human being is frustrated, it's depressed, it's anxious, it's combative, it's all types of things, it's all types of things. And so, you know, from that perspective, right? From that perspective, this is the concept for war. This is the concept of violence, right? Because I'm lacking something and someone else is saying that this lack can be sufficed if I just get rid of this enemy, or if I just purchase this product, right? And so the society that we live in pulls on these kind of like, I mean, for lack of a better term, these heartstrings, right? Based off of our condition of being incomplete. So people could come to us and say, "Hey, you know what? You want to be happy, man? You want to be happy? Buy this van. You want to feel respected? You want to feel like you're worth something? You got to make this amount of money." Right? And you could go on. Oh, you want to be educated? Well, you got to go to this school. You got to get this degree, right? You got to get this accreditation, right? And so this whole society that we live in is manufactured on the basis of us lacking something. It's the only way it works. If we were fulfilled, the cosmetic industry, if women were fulfilled, if women woke up and said, "You know what? I am beautiful, no matter what. I don't care what magazine, TV, this, my next door, it don't matter. I am beautiful." A multi-billion-dollar industry called cosmetics will be gone. Gone overnight. If women just felt beautiful when they woke up, regardless of what they did to themselves, gone, right? And you could go through so many other industries, so many other things. Like even men watching sports, what are we trying to connect to? What is the energy of the crowd and the competition and the anticipation and the stories and the ups and downs? What are we fulfilling? What are we feeling in that point? Why do people go to sporting events and get in fights? Why is that a thing? Why is it when teams win championships, people just aren't content and they go home, but rather they tear down the cities, right? So it's just saying that it's just important to reflect on the society that I live in, right? Because we're in the frame of Yesod, right? Now we're in the frame of Gevura of Yesod. So this frame of this frame of a foundation, I have to really ask myself, like, what is my foundational points? Are my foundational points rooted in the secular culture that denies that I have a soul, that says that, well, you got to do this, you got to do that in order to be fulfilled, and you got to please me, you got to be successful, and you got to be like Jay-Z or Bill Gates or Donald Trump if you're a real virtuous person. when you look at all of the weird, creepy stuff that Puff Daddy is coming out in his trial, right? And we don't have to go into detail, but it's some dark stuff. But again, this is a perfect example. This guy has everything that the secular world says you should have in order to be virtuous. And we see that all that's come out of his success is extreme deviant behavior. Where's the fulfillment at? He's a successful entrepreneur, right? He's a business guy. Where's the fulfillment at? Where's the connection at? And he's not the only one. The whole thing is like this. That's why when I went to the Kabbalah Center, it was like I'm sitting there, Demi Moore is in the front row, Ashton Kutcher, Madonna, Guy Ritchie, Donna Karen, all these different jewelers in Beverly Hills, and all these people are there. Why? Why? Why are they there? Right? Why are they there? They got the money, they got the power, they got the success, because none of that will ever fulfill the person. Right? And so that's why we're learning the Tanya. We're going into that reality because this is where we're at. This is the war. This is the difference between a person's greatness and mediocrity. If I live in the world where I'm going in places with a lack, I don't even know what I really want in life. Right? They say like, oh, well, the rebound relationship never works. Right? Oh, don't be a rebound. Right? Don't be a rebound for somebody. So what are they saying? Don't get into a relationship where a person is only dealing with you out of lack. This person is not fulfilled. Why is it that guys, when they're married, get more attention from women? Right? Because they're not coming from that a lot of times. I'm not saying all the times, but a lot of times they have less of a lack than a single guy. Right? The married guy, has his wife, he has his whole situation set up. He has children, whatever he has his home, right? He has a certain level of fulfillment. If it's everything, assuming everything's positive or positive enough. But in general, that guy, is attractive to women, right? He's attractive to women that because he has a certain energy about him. They want to connect to that energy. That energy is not the energy of lack. So when we're going in life, are we going in places in a place of lack? Or are we walking indoors in a place of fulfillment? Are we walking in the door saying, hey, you know what? I did my mitzvahs today. I made my connection to the creator of the universe. I am one with creation. And everything that I'm experiencing today is exactly what my soul needed. I am good. Or are we walking in saying, I don't have this didn't happen, I'm waiting to see how this works out, I feel terrible, why am I going through this? Oh, you remember this happened 10 years ago? Wow, I couldn't believe that happened to me then. And then you live in this, and we know people who live days like this every single day. Every single day. Their whole day is analyzing and living in a place of lack. When they go into a business meeting, they're going in a place of lack. And if they don't have, one of the ways they cover up with lack is through arrogance. It's fake confidence. People are like, yeah, I know I'm him. I'm him. How you him? How you him? Because what? I'm him. I feel it. No, bro. That's what do they call it? When you're that's what the stuff that comes from your brain, pleasure senses, right? And then you'll progress into something else. So anyway, the point is the same. So that's our ultimate um, flexible to move around with, right? And and um, and so anyway, so that's what we're building here, right? The biggest way to change the world is to not live. Um, yeah, yeah, okay. Um, no, people. I don't know if you guys know Dumasani Washington, but he's like a big Israel advocate. But he's a Christian preacher, but he's a big advocate for Israel. Whatever. Anyways, his son's in town, and his wife passed away suddenly, like literally like 2 months ago. Like, I mean, like everything was fine. You know, they were both traveling different places. She's with the kids, you know, and all of a sudden she started having some pain and then goes in the hospital. 4 hours later, she's pronounced dead. And it was like some rare thing, whatever. It's like some, I don't know exactly the full story. But, anyways, his son just texted me right now saying that he's in town. And, um, anyways, it's just a sad situation. Anyway, so I'm gonna meet up with his son, just just see how we could deal with that. Anyways, all right. Um, so anyway, that's where we're at, right? And that's what we're dealing with. So let's go a little further. Let's go into the Tanya, second chapter. First chapter was exciting. Hold on, where we at? Okay, we're here. So the Bala Tanya is dealing with the this concept of the soul and this concept of what it means to create brotherhood. What does it mean to create connection? What does it mean to fulfill the mitzvahs of the Torah? And so he's changing the conversation and he's going in what we're talking about. He's going and focusing on it. So it says, Ve nefesh, mahad senita be'Israel hi chalech elo. He said the second soul of a Jew is truly a part of God. So let's go back just a little bit. Let's go back just a little bit just so we can recap. Maybe someone who's listening. As we go for any points, any statements, anything you guys good? Maybe questions.
Yeah. You want to say that? Okay. Oh no, we good. Cut
Okay.
up.
All right. So he says, so the last part we end up, he said, the souls of the nations of the world, however, emanate from one another, unclean people would contain no good whatsoever. Jeez. Hold on. We finished the chapter, right? Yeah, we finished it. All right. For in the case of Israel, this soul of klipa is derived from klipa noga, which contains good, and or so they're the animal soul and the godly soul, right? And he says it originates from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So that aspect of that's what we want to get away from, right? We want to get away from the consciousness of good and bad, right? Meaning this is a good thing, this is a bad thing, this is the right thing. I mean, when I say good thing and bad things, obviously we know that there's good and bad. What I'm saying is the experiences that we have every day, we have to see all the experiences as good, even if they're painful, even if they hurt. Why? Because that is the consciousness that allows us to transform and do the correction of the soul. When we're in the frame of, Hebrew to say chetzi chetzi, half and half. Oh, some days are good, some days are bad, some things are okay, some things are not. This type of a thing, it doesn't allow us to grow. And so he says the Masha Ain king. So he says, and the souls of the nations of the world, however, emanate from another unclean klipa, which contains no good. So he's basically separating the souls of the world. He's saying that there's godly souls and there's ungodly souls. And he says it's written in the Etz Chaim, chapter 40, I guess Portal 49, chapter 3. And he says, and that is all the good. Hold on, maybe he has it here. So let's see. Proverbs is holding by, okay, the Talmud, Baba Batra. Hold on 1 second. I just want to see what sources he's bringing for this. All right. Anyways, he says that he says, and all that is, he says, all the good that the nations have done is from the selfish motivation. So the Balatanya does not have a high opinion of a lot of some of the other nations, meaning their soul level, meaning that as we know that there's different levels of the soul's development, and he's holding that the souls of Israel are in the frame of the human soul, right? And as we know, the human soul has the ability to empathize, has the ability to connect to the creator, empathize with things that are completely disconnected from them, the whole thing. But he's saying the other nations also have a soul, but their souls are more in the frame of the animal level, right? Which means is that they have tremendous ability for like power and influence and these things, but it's not for the sake of serving God, it's for the sake of their own vanity. And so I think we could see that in Greek culture and Roman culture, different African societies, certain Asian societies, Middle East, the whole thing. So he says, the Gemara comments on the verse, the kindness of the nations is sin. All the charity and the kindness done by the other nations of the world is only done for their own self glorification, and so on, right? So he's bringing Baba Batra up, which is Gemara says. So he says notes nada ve'eno yodea limi. So what does the Gemara say on this point? That's a little lengthy, but hey, he says it is the type in which who gives charity without knowing who he is gave it to, and the other one takes it without knowing whom he took it from. The Gemara explains. One gives charity without knowing whom he gave it to. This serves to exclude practice, the practice of mar yung jeez, hold on, man. I know. These names, I can't. It just I can't do things without Hebrew. I don't know what it is. You know what it's? I'm always the whole day. I'm trying to figure out talking to people all day in Hebrew. So it's like it just your whole brain. So, anyways, so I'm trying to get this name. Hold on. No. Yodea Amimina Natal Notena Banana Yodena Lami Notena Le Fokek Midaber Akila. All right. So he's saying that he says this is different than practice of Mara Onkva. He says who personally gave charity to the poor without knowing he was the donor. So he's saying two different things. He's saying don't confuse it. There's some people, and he's going to explain what he says. Some people give charity and they don't even know who they're giving it to or why, but it's just for the sake. I think that's what he's doing, for the sake of giving charity and to say that I gave charity. He said, but don't confuse it with the practice of people giving charity and not wanting people to know that they gave the charity, right? Which is a very holy thing, right? He says the other one takes it knowing from who he took it. This serves to exclude the practice of Rav Abba, who would render his money ownerless so a poor person would come and take it without knowing who helped him, although they would know from the money that the money came. He says the Gemara asks, rather, how then should one act to conceal its own identity and also remain ignorant of the identities of the recipients? So he's bringing this point of, and I know that's where it's where he's going. He's bringing the Gemara is bringing this point and basically saying that there's something holy about giving charity without knowing who you're giving it to, and there's something holy about giving charity and and the person who receives it doesn't know who they're coming from. So you protect their like pride. So now they're asking, Gamar's asking questions, says, well, what, what's the right way to do this then? Right? He says, rather, how then should one act to conceal their identity? Right? Or a person remain ignorant. He says, the Gemara answers, the best method to put the money into a charity purse. The Gemara raises an objection. From what is it taught? He says, it's taught by a brisa. He says, how do you know this? He says, taught in a brisa. What's a brisa? A brisa is a Mishnah that didn't make it in the Talmud, right? Because there's many Mishnayot that weren't put in the Talmud, and some weren't. So this is one that was not put in the Talmud, but nevertheless, it still has a weight. He says, what should a person do? He says, this is what Brisa says. The Brisa asks a question, what should a person do to have male offspring? Rav Eliezer says he should distribute his money, um, liberally to among the poor. He says if you want to have kids, Rav Yoshua says he should gladden his wife before engaging in the mitzvah in conjugal relations. It's kind of deep, but he's saying one is saying that he should, give money to the poor if he wants to have boys, and another one says he should, make sure his wife knows that he loves her intensely before they engage in intimate relations. He says, Rob Eliezer ben Yaakov says a person should donate a pruta, which is like a dollar coin or something like this, to a charity purse unless a great and trusted individual like Rabbi Hanania, he says, is appointed to supervise over it. He said, this seems to indicate that putting money into the charity box is not always preferred. The Gemara answers, when we say putting money into a charity box is a preferred way to give charity, this is referring to when a great man of great stature is appointed over it. And he says, the Gemara discuss another concerning charity. Okay, I don't want to go so much into this because it's like it keeps going, but the point is saying that there's a certain methodology of giving charity, and many of the other nations do not have this same understanding. And so therefore charity by them becomes something to exalt like their nobleship and their whole thing. So he says, Ve nefesh ha senit. So he says the second soul of a Jew is truly a part of God above. So before we were just talking about the aspect of the soul that's conflicted, right? It's still holy, but it has this animal quality if you feed it too much, right? And he says, as it's written, he blew into the nostril the soul of life, and you have breathed it into the soul into me. And it is written in the Zohar, and he blows and blows within him. That is to say, from his inwards and his innermost. And for it is something of his internal and innermost validity that man emanates through exhaling his force. So people ask the question, why does it say God had to blow his neshama? Right? God put a neshama. Why does it say God had to blow a neshama? He said because the concept of breathing and breath, it contains the aspect of something within, right? When I inhale and I breathe out, that's coming from internal. So the soul of man is an expression of an aspect of the internal aspect of the creator that's beyond our imagination. Kak al derek matzal nishtamot Israel alu. So he says, so allegorically speaking, have the souls of Jews risen in the divine thought, as it's written, my firstborn son is Israel, and you are the children of the Lord your God. That is to say, just as a child is derived from his father's brain, so too use a anthropomorphism, the soul of each Israel is derived from the thought and wisdom of the Creator. Blessed be He. For He is wise, but not through a knowledgeable wisdom, because He and His wisdom are one, as Maimonides says. So he brings a note from the Zohar, right? So he says, Ve hodu lo hakmei Kabbalah. And so he said, the sages of the Kabbalah have agreed with him, as it's stated in Pardes of Rabbi Moshe Cavero. He says also, according to the Kabbalah of the Arizal, this is sustained. This is sustained in a mystical principle of the clothing of the light. He says in the Insaf. He says through numerous contractions within the vessel of Chabad, Keter Chokmah Bina, Keter Chokmah Bina, and Dat. He says the world of Absolute. He says, but no higher than that. For as he explains elsewhere, the Insaf, blessed be He, is infinitely exalted over and transcends. the essence and levels of Chabad, which in a relation to him are regarded as material actions, and so you have made them all wisdom within it. So okay, so what he's saying here is basically he wants us to understand that because the Creator's wisdom, he's saying because he just made a statement, right? And he's trying to quantify this point, right? He wants to be clear. He says he brings the point of a closeness. He says, so allegorically speaking, have the souls of Jews risen? He says, have the souls of Jews risen to the divine thought as it's written, my firstborn son is Israel, and you are my child. So he says, he's bringing these verses. He says, that is to say, just as a kid is derived from his father's brain, so too, using anthropomorphism, the soul of each Israelite is derived from the thought and wisdom. So when you hear that, you say, oh, wow, okay. So the thought and wisdom of Hashem is like my neshama. So he's saying, no, understand what we're saying. We're saying the world of wisdom that God created, the levels of world of Asilut and Bria and Asiya and I mean Yitzira and Asiya, and then the worlds of Chokmah, Bina, and Dat, those worlds of wisdom are the wisdoms that ultimately our soul is expressing from the creator, but not the creator's wisdom itself. You know, he's making that separation. Sehu hamada hamada vehu ve'de'at. And he says that is he is the knowledge and the knower. And this is not within the power of any man to comprehend. You got it? He says it is written, can you find God by searching? And it is also written, for my thoughts are not your thoughts. Very, very famous point. He says, Rivot, Mine, Chiluche Madrigot, sorry. Madrigal. So he says Madrigal. So all right. So he says in though there are myriad of different different graduations of souls, neshamot ranked upon rank ad infinitum, as with the superiority of the soul of the patriots and our teachers Moses above the souls of our generations who live in the period preceding the coming of Mashiach, which are as the very souls of the feet compared to the brain and the head. So in every generation, there are leaders of Jews whose souls are in the category of head and brain, and in comparison to those of the masses and ignorant. Likewise, are there distinctions between Nashimot and Nashimot for every. He says there's also likewise the distinctions between the nefesh and the nefesh for every soul, and consists of, or so the nash the not sorry nafsh the nashimot and the nashimot of every soul consists of a nefesh, ruach, and neshama. So this is the thing, okay, and this is the thing. A lot of Jewish people don't like talking about this because it's not understood very well by the non-Jewish world. But I'm just going to say it like this: the way that the Jewish people believe that when they say a Jewish soul, they're not necessarily talking about a Jewish soul, right? Because the idea of Judaism, in the way that we understand today, is relatively recent over the last couple thousand years, and it really matured a lot over the last 500 years, right? And so the idea is like this, and this is the way that we see it, and this could explain to you certain apprehensions and these types of things. It's like this: the Bala Tanya, who you're reading, what he's writing, he wrote that in Europe. Okay, so what he saw around him, he came to conclusions because of the behavior of the people he was surrounded by in Europe, right? You had the Slavic people, you had all these different people, right? Slavic means slaves. right? And so you had a lot of people, and they treated the Jews very harshly. In Russia, Ukraine's, all types of things happened, right? And so it's like torture stuff. And so they came to the conclusion, and it's not by them. The Gemara even speaks about this 2,000 years, right? Before they came to the conclusion that the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew is the soul, right? Obviously, right? Just like the difference between a non-Jew and a person who converts to Judaism, his dynamic and her dynamic is the difference between them is the soul. It's not intellectual, right? And so the idea is that when we talk about the five parts of the soul, there's a belief that the vast majority of the world does not have these different levels of the soul. And so this aspect of cruelty and animalistic and heathenistic behavior is very natural for them. And it actually feeds them, right? This whole idea of power and conquest and rape and pillage, and when I think about, my family's experiences in America, family growing up in the South and Midwest, I would also conclude that many of those people that were defined themselves as white also they were very low souls. And that's how they were able to kill, murder, and feel nothing about it, because they did not have a godly soul within them whatsoever. I'm on record saying it, right? They were animals, and they lived like animals, right? And many of them were animals in Europe, right? They were eating rats.
You know,
Go ahead. No, this is you right here. Go ahead.
no, well, it's really a question that I have that's on this subject. I was communicating with a brother yesterday, and he's I think I mentioned he's really thinking about communicating with you.
Mm-hmm.
But what we were talking about, we were discussing just colonialism, and just hatred, and just conquering Africa, and we're just talking about how the European race did this, right? And there was a song that he was mentioning, and in the song it talks about, it asks the question, like, where did they come from? Like, where did they come from? And I'm gonna tell you, based off the studies that we've been through, um, I said, it's very possible that we're asking the wrong question about where, not the wrong question, but maybe we're looking for a place. And I was like, man, what we're learning is that it's very possible that we may have created some of this. We may have created this. Maybe we're not, we're not looking at the outward appearance, but maybe we should look at the soul part and say to ourselves, did we draw these entities? Did we draw these souls to us? Maybe these souls existed in a time, in a place that they were supposed to function in that manner from an animalistic standpoint. But maybe we caused them to come out of that area. And we kind of talked about that, and it was like, wow, what if our breaking of the commandments, what if the just the rebellion and the idolatry drew them in, to our communities, and drew them into our lives, because it's kind of like we encouraging them, and that's where this question is coming from. uh, when we look at people and we look at souls, I know we talked about creating angels, but is it possible for us to create that type of barbaric spirit that is influencing them to turn their eyes toward us? In other words, and turn out, because it's interesting what he's saying. He's saying, I can get it. If you look at the era that he was in, the rabbi was in, and you look at that part of Europe during that time frame, it was very barbaric. It was very ruthless, and to have the eyes, I can just imagine that Jews in the Holocaust was looking at the Nazi regime, looking at Hitler and most Germans, saying, man, how could these people, like, how could they go to sleep at night? You know, like what, like they can't be human, you know? And so that I think that's something to think about. But that's my question. Like, can we create the angels that actually influence these type of souls to actually draw into us?
100%. And what we do is that it's not that it's not just the angel part. Sorry, I just had a little snack. It's not just the angel part. It's also the dynamic that we give when we give strength to the other side, right? If we're saying that there is an animal aspect called the citra akra, right? Which is kind of like the where the darkness, the selfish, the negativity, the desire to receive just for oneself, right? Not the desire to receive for the sake of sharing. Not that, but just a desire to receive for oneself. Just pure me, like just taking. That negativity, when those souls of the other nations are rooted in that. So when we, as godly people with godly souls, feed that lower aspect of ourselves, that energy feeds all of the souls on planet Earth that actually are rooted in that level of in that darkness. So every time we transgress the Torah, we give strength to that side of the Sitra Akra, the dark side of reality, and then that dark side of reality strengthens the world against us. So, as it relates to the African American experience, we would have to conclude that these people had a relationship with God that to the point where God, every step of the way in America, he never let us forget about who we were and even the aspect of where we come from, right? And when you look at Jewish history just around the world in general, when you talk to the Middle Eastern Jews, they'll tell you, you know what? What kept us Jewish was the strictness of the Arabs. The Arabs wouldn't allow us to assimilate. They say, you guys are Jews, you got to pay your tax, and you're not assimilated. So that's why many Jews in the Middle Eastern culture, may not be as outwardly religious in their garb and dress, but internally are very spiritual. And in the Jews that were in Europe, they had to deal with other things because they were trying to convert them. They were killing Jews, burning down synagogues with people inside because they wouldn't convert to Christianity, right? Some people did get weak and converted. But the point is still to say that is that goes without being said. And the same thing by us as individuals. If I go out and commit sins, whatever enemies I have against me, they will become strong and mighty.
So
And go
so
ahead.
so okay, so all right, so when as we were concluding our conversation, just kind of give some insight on that because what you're saying is powerful. Because I was telling him, I said, man, because he was like, well, man, where do you think that they came from? And they, there's a whole lot of rhetoric about it. I say, man, I think that they came from the Citracra, man, and I was kind of explaining to him what that was. But what I'm hearing in Sefer is that there's like two types of souls in the earth. And one soul is all about creation and creating and unity and positive things and growth and development and positivity and that's what that soul is focused on. Whereas the other soul is about destruction and tearing down and disunity and division and all of these different things. And so as we were talking, he was like, well, how do we combat against that? Right? Hold on a second. How do we combat against that? And what we were talking about, the conclusion that we came to is that we cannot we cannot behave ourselves like them, even when they are still behaving in that manner. And so it's like when they produce hate, we must produce love. And that's how we're going to overcome it. When they produce prejudices, we have to produce a place for all to be able to learn and to do what is right. And so, am
Amen.
I following the right train of
Yeah,
thought
yeah,
there?
and I would be more specific about what you mean. And our response to that is to do the mitzvot, right? When we see
Okay.
the world,
Yeah.
right, the world as it is, we are either injecting light, we're either being a light to the nations, or we're bringing darkness. That's it. And when we don't feed the other nations, when we don't do our role as Jews, when we don't keep the Torah, the people of this world suffer. You know, it's interesting. That's one of the first lessons I learned about Judaism. Actually, just reminded me. I learned this lesson from Rabbi Yehuda Sior, who actually lives here in Israel now. He lives in the north, him and his wife, Allison, who I knew at the Kabbalah Center. And, you know, he's an Israeli type guy, very hardcore type guy. And I remember when I first was learning about Judaism in Kabbalah Center, because it's not something they normally do, right? It's just something I had a very close relationship, you know, and Yehuda, you know, mentioned it, this whole thing, and it became a thing, right? So the thing is, it's like this. Um, I had a meeting with Yehuda Sior, and you know, you saw me over Shabbos, whatever, and then I was starting to pray in the morning, right? Joining the minyan. I wasn't counted in the minyan, but I was at least I'll come, you know, pray. At this point, I wasn't even rapping tefillin. I was just coming in the morning with my prayer book. Everyone else was rapping tefillin. I was like, I'm good. I'm okay. But the point is saying that. Um, so on this particular day, I had a meeting with them, but on that Sunday, I didn't come to morning prayers. Right? I didn't come to morning prayers. It's like, you know what? Shabbat, third meal, you know, I'm sleeping in this morning without, you know, praying. I mean, I'm, you know. So I get to the class and he said, so how was your Shabbat? I was like, oh, it was amazing. This, blah, 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 the whole thing. He said, wow. He said you got totally, you felt totally connected. And I was like, yeah, yeah. He's like, you felt like fulfilled, like the energy. I'm all, yeah, yeah. And he says, and he was telling me about this whole story. He had to go across town to fix this mikvah, the whole thing. And so he said, the difference between the Jewish soul and the non-Jewish soul is like this. The non-Jewish soul, you know, wants to receive. Once it's good, it's good. Once it's satiated, it's good, right? And and that's the basis of it, right? It's satisfied. You know, it's driven by pleasure. It's driven by physical pleasure, right? He said, but the Jew, even when the Jew's satisfied, it still has to do specific work. And so when a Jew prays in the morning, he's not just doing it for himself. Okay, I'm fulfilled. Yes, I'm fulfilled. I feel good. Wow, thank you, Hashem. Woo, woo, I needed that. Yeah, me. He said the Jewish job is to bring light into the world for all of humanity, right? And there was a story told by another rabbi, Eliyahu Yardini, and he told a story about how the concept of shakrit came into existence, the morning prayer. And he said, you know, after Abraham, you know, had, you know, a circumcision, these different things, you know, he was waiting at his tent, you know, to, you know, bring people in, you know, these different things, connect people. And one day he became somewhat sad because he realized how many people existed in the world and how he's only going to be able to connect to the random Bedouins traveling through the desert. And so he started to think about all these people. And so they said Hashem sent angels to him, and they brought him up to this higher reality where he could see the whole world. And he could see by talking to God that when talking to God was as if he was like shooting, like you see these fireworks, they go up with lights and then they spread into all these miniature lights and they go all over the place. So that's kind of like the tefillah, right? Tefillah is from the bottom up. So we're down in this world and then we're talking to Hashem and it goes up. But what we're doing when we have the right intentions is that we want whatever we are praying for to go everywhere in the world. If we're anything that we're missing as Jews, if we're suffering with money, we're suffering with love, we're suffering with friendship, we're suffering with peace, we're suffering with anything that we are dealing with in life, it's a reflection of what the world's going through, right? God uses the Jewish people as the heart. We're the heart of creation. So what the world, what was going on in all the other parts of the body, affects the heart, right? And so that aspect of the heart is who we are. So we are here to serve humanity. We are here to be a light to humanity. We are responsible. Like a person runs for political office, they're going into public office for service. They want to serve their society. They want to improve the environment. This is the job of the Jew. Our job is to bring light into the world, whether it's Torah study, whether it's tzedakah, whether it's other mitzvot, whether it's loving our partner, loving our children, loving our fellow Jew, all these different things, showing kindness to the other nations. All of these different things that we do in the world is there to bring light to humanity. That's our only job. That's it. There's nothing else. We are the light bulb for reality. And when we're not acting as a light bulb, we get dark and then the people get crazy and then they want to come and kill us. Every time, Jews, everywhere you look, there's a Jewish tragedy. It was a byproduct of a simulation. Every time. The Jews come in, they live in a shtetl, they live in a ghetto, and then over time, some laws change and it allows them to integrate. And Jews, because we're highly sophisticated, we have the intelligence of Avraham Avinu, that supernatural intelligence that Avraham Avinu has. That's what him and Sarah, every descendant from Abraham and Sarah has a hyper intelligence that was cultivated through the Torah on Mount Sinai. Right? How to express that intelligence in the total right way. So Jews are naturally genius people. They're smart. We're learning legal cases all day, laws, the multiple levels of understanding of definitions. Come on. You think the non-Jews, he's eating non-kosher food. He's watching sports. He's watching TV shows. He's watching movies. Right? Their time of holiness of God is what? Going to the beach, going to the mall, going shopping, which is fine. These are all things that Jews can participate in. But it's saying that's it. This is the living system of the non-Jew. So how can they compete with a person who spends so many months out of the year in complete devotion to God? And I'm talking about holidays. Has fulfillments of commandments every single day, morning. I used to think back in America, this is before I converted to Judaism, right? This is before when I was at the Kabbalah Center, and I was there for 7 years, right? Praying every morning, the whole thing. Obviously, I didn't start off that way. It grew into that. But I used to think to myself, you look at say LA, right? Hollywood. A lot of the Jews, even if they're not religious, have still some Jewish-like practices. You know what I'm saying? But most of the Jews who are in finance and in a lot of these other places, a lot of them are religious. And so you think about it. On Monday morning, when everyone's going to work, the Jew has spent his whole time on Saturday and Friday night with his family, focus on his children, focus on this, no TV, no cell phone, no nothing, eating food, inviting guests over, devoted to God. The next day, wake up, going to shul, reading Torah, giving over Torah, hanging out with other families, pushing his kids in the stroller, right? His wife's wearing beautiful clothes. He's wearing beautiful clothes. And you see them walking around. Oh, look at the Jews. It must be Sabbath. Yeah, that's how the non-Jews say. It must be their Sabbath. Right? And so you have this whole experience. And then the next day, Sunday, they're chilling. Maybe they go to the beach, whatever, do whatever type of thing. And then they go to work on Monday. What is the non-Jew doing on over the weekend? What did he do to elevate himself? What did he do to connect himself? What did he do? Nothing. Nothing. He went to church. What did he do? What did he do in church? What's there? Where's the technology to elevate my soul to the light of that day? Okay, you're not even on Sabbath. Okay, fine. But just say you're holding by Sunday. What are you doing on Sunday to connect? What, you're singing, you're dancing, you're jubilee, this whole thing. The guys, where's the connection? Now, can you get body pleasure out of that? Yes. Just like people going to yoga, just like people going to the beach, just like people doing all types of stuff. Yes, you could get relaxation. Yes, you can feel something. But where does it connect to the neshama? Where does it connect to divine intelligence? How do you connect to peace? A lot of our worship in America as African Americans came through just wanting to have a time away from the slave master. And those cruelties and those abuses, that was the frame of worship, was just to have a space of a free expression to a degree, right? And so when we calibrate that, when we think about these things, like, bro, we've been in the church for a long time, and we received a lot of judgment from God. A lot of judgment from God. We're going to church every week. Back then, church was a thing. Not like it is today, but back then, everybody went to church. I mean, obviously you had people there, but vast majority of Black society, and we were going through that. Why? And if we had Torah thinking, we would sit back and say, there's some disconnection we have in our community that's allowing this darkness to come in it. Every time the Jews have suffered tragedy, what do? They became more religious. The whole Haredi movement, right? The whole Haredi movement, what did it come out of? The Holocaust. Never again. We were punished because we went away from the Torah. Now, obviously, there's Jews that don't agree with that, right? Other this, anti-Semitism, whatever, but vast majority of religious Jews believe that every tragedy that Jews have been through is because of our disconnection from the Torah and God whipping us and giving us makot, giving us lashes to bring us back into the fold, right? And probably you could say the only reason why Israel has survived as a country is because it continues to grow in that way. Country becomes more and more religious. People don't want to acknowledge it. The religious are having way more babies than the non-religious, and they're outpopulating. Like in Jerusalem, the religious pretty much almost took over all of Jerusalem. I remember when I first got here 7, 8 years ago, that was a big problem. The non-religious people, I remember meeting a guy who was running for mayor, and his whole argument, he didn't know. I guess he didn't see me as so religious. I had a black keep on, but he was telling me his campaign was all about, not allowing the religious to take control of Jerusalem, right? So perhaps that's the reason why the country is successful, right, and moving forward. But the point is, just saying back to the original point, is just this idea of being able to ask ourselves, where's the technology, right? Martin Luther King Day, that's a great day. Martin Luther King was a great leader, right? I know I go after leaders, but Martin Luther King Day, what's the mitzvahs? What is the mitzvah? Like, what is it? Is it giving charity? Is it telling over stories? Is it honoring God? Is it what's the mitzvah? All of our holidays, where's the mitzvah? Okay, so Thanksgiving, you could say, hey, people come together. Maybe Christmas, you could say people give presents. Maybe, I don't know. But Christmas is holding by JC's bris milah. No. JC's birth. The whole world is celebrating a Jew who went off to Derek. Look at it, the whole world. They're like, we love the Jew who did not fulfill whatever Judaism felt that he should fulfill. And we celebrated the whole world. And you can see the same thing. The Jews in America who are away from Judaism are not persecuted. The Jews who look religious are targets. So that's the point. And so the thing is with the two different nations, just as a point, the two different nation concept is saying that there is a group of souls on planet Earth that have five parts, right? Chaya Yechida, I'm going from top down. Chaya Yechida, Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. I mean, no, I'm sorry, I said Chaya Yechida, Neshama, Ruach, and Nefesh. Nefesh being the lowest, the animal soul. The animal soul, the Nefesh, is the aspect of the soul that's rooted in the body consciousness. So it's the aspect of the soul that's very much connected to physical pleasure. The other nations only have that aspect of the soul. Not all of them. Within them, there's people who have that, and generally those people, if not in this lifetime, the next one, eventually become a part of, the Jewish people, right? But the Torah talks about this, that, it's a whole thing, that the Midrashim goes very into this. There's so much we have to learn. But the point is just saying that those other souls, they are rooted in body consciousness. Their whole thing is body consciousness, body pleasure. And that's why they only have 7 laws. Because those 7 laws, if you look at don't eat an animal, court trials, stealing, all these different things, having a proper court system, these things are very much rooted in civic reality, things of this world, right? Because that's the extent where they go. So a lot of times you talk to people and you talk about these high concepts of Sitra Akra and levels and the spherotes and that, and they're like, they just don't connect to it. They just don't connect to it. And there's Jews that don't connect to it who also are not rooted in all these souls. They just have a name and they call themselves Jewish. But when you get to know them, you see them, they're not holding by this. They don't have the capacity to understand. And so some of them even have practices that, if you really look at them, could look like a Avodah, right? So so the point is to say, like, what is this connection point that we're talking about? Right? This connection point of understanding that the culture that we're around, when you analyze the world from a frame of soul consciousness, right? When you analyze the world with that, you can see why there's so much focus on pleasure, because that's what the masses want. They don't want to think. They want to tap out. We're here to find the people who do have those additional aspects of the soul that are stuck, that are looking for access to wisdom. They're saying that I can't go to the local church. I can't go to the local mosque. I need something higher. I can't just submit myself. I can't just worship and don't ask questions. It doesn't feel right that someone died for my sins. I'm sorry, it doesn't. I want to own my own tikkun. So this is the struggle. This is the world you have to see around you. Why doesn't everyone connect? Here's the truth, right? It's right in front of you. God blew a soul into man. We have a neshama. We live in this reality. We need God's light. So why doesn't everybody connect? Because they don't care. Why don't they care? Because they weren't built that way. Now, do we have a responsibility to be kind to those people and enlighten them at the level that they can understand? Yes. But that's why that's what the sages say. Don't go around teaching non-Jews Torah, even though we read a whole thing and there's different opinions and what that means. But the point is saying, because we don't invite people to Judaism, because if you don't have a soul for this, what are you doing? You know how many people I have met on my journey that have had the wrong intentions and they get in? This thing happened, that thing happened. They meet this rabbi, and then they get in, and you know what happens? They suffer. They suffer. And they become a problem ultimately in the Jewish community. I've seen it. And why do they suffer? Because if you don't have the neshama and you're doing mitzvahs, you're bringing darkness to yourself. You're bringing judgment. So it's very particular. Right? And so when we talk about bringing people in, these different things, that's the part you have to see. What level of a soul is this person at? Not intellectually. Not intellectually. But the ability to comprehend high-level concepts, things that have no physicality, right? And so let's read a little bit more, and and we'll finish up. But I just, it's just a very important thing that this is the reality that we're in. The Jewish world is a world of souls, not just the souls of ourselves and our fellow Jews and even other people, but even the souls of animals, the souls of plants, the souls of trees, the souls of insects, right? The souls of rocks, minerals. All of them have different sparks of light. And God tells us how to deal with them. That's why we have a halakha, because these things are actually living. So if God gave me, in Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, he speaks on this in the book Horeb, which we haven't studied, but which is one of my favorite books. They do have it on Safaria, but all I seen is like German translations. But it's one of my favorite. It's an absolute. It's one of the first books I fell in love with before I even came to Israel in Jewish literature. But Rabbi Shah gave it to me. Him and his family should be blessed. He's in LA. But the point is saying that that dynamic of seeing the world from a place of souls, and these souls are dependent on the light given over by Israel. And so the whole concept of being a Jew, or if a person, say, wants to join the Jewish people, someone listening or whatever, a person who comes from a Jewish lineage and it was lost and they want to make a comeback, they have to realize, in order to receive the blessings of being a Jew, that the consciousness has to be, I am a warrior for God's light, and my job is to distribute as much light in the world as possible for humanity. That's it. And if you hold that perspective, you're going to win. I learned that from the Rav Berg before I came into Judaism. So for me, studying, people ask me, was going through conversion, was it hard? No, it wasn't hard. It was more information, more technology. What do you mean? I'm winning here. I was already powerful. Now I'm super powerful. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what we're talking about now. I was a great person. Now I'm growing into something beyond my imagination. I don't know who I was talking to about this. I think it was Otino. But I was talking about the first times when I first started going to prayers at the Kabbalah Center, right? And I remember going to the Kabbalah Center, and I was like, you know what I'm saying? I came from a very proud Muslim background. It wasn't like I was, coming from some place of lack. Like, I felt like, my dad was this big, humongous millionaire guy. My mom, super educated. We lived in this very big house, the whole thing, right? So I'm thinking we made it. And then I get connected to something that affected me that there was no physicality to. There was no reason to, right? And so from there, it was like I remember going to those first times I didn't even know there was Shabbat day. I thought Shabbat was only a nighttime thing. People have Friday night, they come, they go to the synagogue, they pray and they have a nice dinner. That's what I do at the Kabbalah Center. No one ever mentioned morning prayer. I just randomly heard it. Yeah, morning tomorrow, see you tomorrow in the morning. I'm like, tomorrow? They're like, yeah, yeah. So what do you guys do then? He said, we read the Torah. Like on Shabbat? And I'm like, and they're like, yeah, but smaller amounts. And we pray. I said, the same prayers, pretty much. I'm like, what? You guys doing this during the week too? It was just like, for me, it was just crazy, right? I'm like, you could get this light on the week, because at this point, I'm already addicted to Shabbat nighttime. I mean, I'm waking. I mean, the first Shabbat I ever went to, I remember at the Kabbalah Center, I woke up the next day and I was laying in the bed and I was like, what happened? Like, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes you go out with the boys, you have a bunch of drinks, and then you wake up, you're like, wait, how did I get home? I mean, hey, we've all had those experiences, right? But this was like that. I woke up and I was like, what happened to me? Period. I know I got home. I'm just saying, how did this whole thing happen? How do I feel this way right now? I have to investigate. And so that became the beginning of me going over and over to these things. And then I found out that there was a Saturday morning prayer. Because I thought it was Friday night. And I was like, what? And then I was like so into it. I couldn't accept the Jewish stuff. It was like, I couldn't accept it. I was like, I'm not Jewish. I'm not supposed to connect to these Hebrew and these words and this thing. That's for the Jews. I'm a Muslim. I'm on this side. That's where I was at. And it was a real struggle by me. Right? But I was kept being compelled to go and go and go. So I remember like sitting there, and the first time when I first started to Monday for Saturdays, I would come exactly at the time where they gave a lecture, and then I would leave. That's how proud I was. I'm like, I'm not doing no Jewish stuff. This is too much. I mean, so Friday night's okay. It's cool. It's a dinner, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not doing this every day. Come on now. I'm good. I'm complete, right? And I remember I did that for a couple weeks. Go, and I was dating a girl at the time who was Jewish as well, and went to high school with me, actually, this girl. And you know, she would come with me in the morning. We would go listen to the lecture, and I look over at her and we'll leave. We're out. And then one day I was sitting next to a guy who worked at the Kabbalah Center, and the lecture was over and I was getting ready to leave. And I said, all right, see you. And then he grabbed my arm. He said, where are you going? This is the best part. He said, I know. I said, but my, like, I don't know, like my leg, my side's hurting me right now. I want to lay down. This whole thing. He said, really? He said, we're about to sing a prayer for healing. And I'm like, what? And then they start singing this song as they open the ark in the Kabbalah Center. And it was the first time I saw Ark open and they're singing this song and this beautiful melody. And it was just such an impact on me. And I just felt this almost outer body experience. And I felt the intensity of the pain even more. Then I was like, man, I gotta get at it. Like, whoa, what's going on? And then they brought out the Torah and they started reading it, and I completely forgot about everything. Because the guy next to me had the Torah as well, obviously not on the scroll, but he had a book, and he was just, you know, as the guy was reading, he was following, you know, I was following along, you know, with him. He had his finger on each word, and I followed along, and I forgot about that whole thing. But the point is saying that was the beginning of me coming to Saturday morning prayer, and not just for the lecture, but eventually coming for the Torah thing, and eventually for the whole service. But back then, when I'm standing there with that ark opening, if you would have came to me and say, "Hey, Mr. Man," I would be like, "Hey, what's up? Hey, actually, like 15 years from now, you're going to be living in Jerusalem as a rabbi and teaching students Kabbalah." What? I mean, then I couldn't imagine. I mean, it was like, what are you talking about? I'm here, you know, the opening the ark. My side hurts. What do you mean? This whole thing, all this Jewish stuff is weird. Come on, stop it. God, are you playing some type of game with me? What are you doing? Right? And what got me to the point of comfort was knowledge. It wasn't anyone convincing me. It wasn't like, you know, some indoctrination process. The Kabbalah Center is not trying to make people Jewish. You know, they're a business. You know, people come in, they teach what they teach, and that's it. You go where you want to go with it. You want to stay there, you can stay. But becoming Jewish would imply you would leave, right? Because it's not necessarily a Jewish environment per se, as it is teaching aspects of Judaism, right? So that's not their goal, right? Their goal isn't to indoctrinate people for that. So that was a big part. But the thing is that what I connected to was the mission of being a part of bringing light in the world. And that's what I learned. One of the biggest things I learned from the Rob Berg and really Yehuda Berg, you know, still a very close friend of mine, and he's here actually in Israel now, is this idea of volunteering. And volunteering was a big deal for me because it's not something I like, you know, it's not like like I never volunteered before somewhere. You know what I mean? You volunteer somewhere, you do this, maybe you go somewhere, you feed homeless, something, whatever. You volunteer, you do something nice. But I never looked at volunteering as a mechanism to connect to the light force of the creator. And I never looked at volunteering and using my skills that God gave me to serve him by helping others. Right. So I had a marketing company at that time. It's called Connection Services. And we were very young. I'm talking about we were like probably like 23 years old. And it was me, a friend of mine that, you know, grew up in the same neighborhood as me, whatever. This guy, Jason Peskin, right? Good guy. His dad's Jewish, mom wasn't. And we had a little marketing company. We were working with publications and creative strategies for subscriptions, the whole thing. But I have a very big background in marketing, right? I know how to market things, promote things, all types of things. I mean, that I grew up in that spirit, right? In the media entertainment space. but he saw that I had that ability, and so I started to work with him. That's how we became friends, because I started showing them how to market some of their things differently, right? Certain titles, certain textures, and the Kabbalah Center is brilliant marketers. Don't get me wrong, right? Like probably some of the best in the world ever. But that was our connection. Was on that perspective of that, and but I was doing it as a way to serve God. I wasn't on salary. I didn't make money. You know what I mean? It was in that frame, and so that aspect of seeing that I could create and I could promote and I could market things that bring people closer to Hashem, bring people to the awareness of godliness. That was the beginning of that, and those skills are things that you see today, right? When you see me doing these different projects, I learned media. You know what I mean? Like I've been in media, since I was a kid, right? New York Times, LA Times featured all these things for different things in the media space. But the point is just saying that, but using that to serve God, using my image to serve God, to bring the wisdom of the sages to more people, right? To give people more access to tools to improve their lives without being controlled by someone else or someone else's opinion, right? Bringing more awareness to things. So that's what this whole thing is about, right? And so that's how you know someone is about this life, because they want to go out and make an impact. They want to go out and share because their soul needs it. They need it. They may not know how to do it the right way. They may not have the right tools. They may not have the right formula, but they have that inside of them. And so that to me is the most precious thing on planet Earth, is that desire to share and that desire to give. So, I formed an institution, to focus on that. And so that's, we're teaching throughout the day, hopefully developing other teachers that, will be teaching on the platform, and, eventually, they're on if they want, whatever. And that's it. But that's where we're at in this whole thing. This whole thing is about massive transformation and living your potential. This is part of my potential. I could not have imagined this 20 years ago, right? And I could almost guarantee you, I won't even imagine where things are going to be at in 5 years or 3 years, right? Being a dad, B'vat Hashem, and all these other things that come along with family and growing this institution and, opening up offices in different places, study centers, broadcast centers. So, anyways, we talked it out a lot, but I think these conversations are so important. You know what I mean? Because this is your life. This is a life. This is a direction you guys have been in. For decades. And I'm just here to help support that process to your greatness, right? And that's why we're focusing on the soul, because once we connect to that, it's over, baby. It's done. All the slavery is over, right? Humanity is in slavery because they don't even know who they are. They think who they are is these external concepts. And we bring that idea. No, you're a neshama. You are already fulfilled. That's when we say Modi Ani. We're accepting that from the beginning. I'm already good. God put the soul in me. I'm blessed. He has a purpose for me. I'm loved. I'm part of the light force of the creator. That's it. Everything else happens throughout the day. Okay, it's part of the tikkun process. But that's it. Relationships is about correction. Marriage is the most ultimate form of that, the most sensitive part of that, right? And that's why it could be such a disaster if the right technology is not injected in it. Personal relationships, business, all these things. So that's what I got to go to this meeting. Actually, I'm not necessarily late, but I'm supposed to be there at 8. It's not very far from where I'm at. But this is the thing. I'm doing another class this evening. We're probably going to do the Tanya. We're going to probably continue on where we're at now. We're going to do it, but probably like around like 21 or 22 o'clock. It just depends on what time I get back. But the guys from Nigeria are going to be in it, and maybe some of the other people before. So it'd be great if you guys, you guys are learning Tanya. We're learning together. So if you guys have the time, I'll send a link. And unless something crazy goes on or whatever, which I doubt, I'll send you guys a link, and we'll continue on, this discussion. But this is it, like I had some humongous meetings today, and I was just telling Zakaria about this earlier, and you know, it's like at a point, when things happen when you're younger, you're very excited about it, and you want to tell everybody, but at a certain level, nobody cares and nobody wants to hear it. You know what I mean? Like nobody's trying to hear it, bro. Like nobody's trying to hear, yeah, I just this happened and this is going on. I'm doing this next week and blah 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 blah. They think you're bragging to them. It's like I ain't bragging to you, bro. I can't get no energy from you, right? Even if you thought it was the best thing in the world, I couldn't gain from that. But I am excited and I want to share good news, right? But you got to choose who you share it with and when you share it, right? I mean, you could say things, but like, anyway, the point is just saying that, you know, um, it's at a certain level of growth, it's just you and the creator. You have people around you, spouses, partners, all types of people. But at the end of the day, it's you and the creator, and the things that you used to fantasize about become normalities, but it's more like a responsibility now. It's not like just like work, or some great thing and in growth and all these things. Like no, it's a responsibility, and it's a responsibility I can't get out of now. You know what I mean? I can't do it, and God keeps putting me in this and this. It's like reaffirming. You understand? When I first saw myself on the cover of the National Post in front of the Harabayat, I was like, "What?" Because I didn't know they were going to put me on the cover. I had no idea, and that's like a huge publication. It's not even that it's huge. It's just seeing yourself as a trip. Like you're just looking. You're like, "Whoa, that's me. I'm on the cover. Whoa, whoa, whoa." But the reality is, you look at it and you're excited, like, wow, like I'm connecting to so many people, this. But the reality is, it's just a reaffirmation that this is your responsibility in this lifetime. And everyone knows it, right? People see me everywhere. Hey, Rabbi. Hey, Rabbi. Hey, Rob. Hey, Rabbi. Hey, Chief Rabbi. All these different things, right? But what he's saying is that, hey, Mr., you know, reflection of the Torah, right? Because that's what it means in the Jewish community. That's what it means in Jerusalem. Someone says, Rabbi, you're reflecting the best of the Jewish community in terms of behavior, conduct, and this whole thing. So I can't get out of that. I can't just change my behavior. I can't just be someone different. Not that I would ever want to, but it's just saying that, just being aware of that accountability that comes with responsibility and how it's not easy and it is a heavy thing. And I think even Sephora, like when we first got married, it wasn't like such a thing. But once I became a rabbi and all that media attention and the community dynamic, I think it was one of it was a big factor for a lot of things, and it's a big responsibility. And it's a heavy load. It's a heavy load being a Rebbitzin in Jerusalem, meaning that, everywhere you go, people are asking for a bracha. Women are telling you this and their problems. And people want you to give classes. And, the women are there, because, the Jerusalem, I mean, they everybody loves African Americans, you know what I mean? And so when they see someone who's not African American in a relationship with an African American, they tend to want to connect to that person a little bit stronger, especially when it's woman and woman, because of that. And mostly women don't really connect to male rabbis. They usually connect with the Rebbitzins. Even though they may learn from the male rabbi, they still talk to Rebbitzin. But the point is saying, so this was a very overwhelming thing, right? And it's a heavy thing, right? And so this is just a responsibility. And it's the same thing when people say you Jew. Oh, the Jews are doing this, the Jews are doing that. Why are they saying that? Because they see us in a certain way. Oh, well, there's homosexuality in Tel Aviv and this, and kids are dying in Gaza and this, and I thought you guys were God's people, the chosen people. It must be that you guys are the real ones, right? And so anyways, we'll figure this out. Sorry, I just I love you guys. I want you guys just to connect, with me in this journey as a strength point and anything. But any ideas, reflections on anything else?
Yeah, no, no, it's as you was talking, I think we've all had that experience before where we are really excited about something, excited about an achievement, or just excited about something that Hashem has done in our lives. And you go to call someone up to share it with them, to share, and it's like, oh, okay, hey man, great, hey, but look, I gotta run to the gas station or something, and it's like, man, like, did you just hear what I said? But I think that if you're climbing Mount Everest, you're blessed if you have a partner to climb with you. But
Yep.
sometimes you get up to the top of the mountain, you look up, and it's an amazing thing. You're like, wow, I made it. And then you look around, it's like I'm all by myself, and
Ain't nobody here.
nobody here to see. But it's really not about. It's not about the climb itself. It's about or should I say, it's not about the view or the aspect of being at the top of the mountain. But I think that the bigger thing is the journey and the struggle that it took to get there, and how Hashem was there with you all along. And I can imagine how Joshua and Caleb felt when they finally crossed the Jordan and they saw the walls of Jericho come down. I can imagine what they felt like. Man, all of our comrades are not with us. It's just me and you. Just me and you. Even our teacher can't go where we're going. And so that's very humbling. That's a very powerful thing, and it should be studied even more.
Yeah, and on that point you just brought out, on the point that you just brought out, it's like, but you know what? It's one of the ultimate forms of love from God, that He gives us the ability, even though we look so much alike and we have so much in common as human beings, as different ethnic groups, as Jews, we have so much in common. But He creates a mechanism in the world where there's moments and times where we have the ability to do things completely on our own, right? And that's like, I mean, as much as it's scary and it's going to be difficult, there's nothing greater than that. And I'll say, to your point, one of the saddest parts about being in Israel and Jerusalem and being away, from my family and these types of things, is that I've had so many unbelievable, beautiful experiences with other human beings, with God, with the land, physical land, and growth. Because I mean, I talk to my parents every week on Zoom, and they're gonna come out here. The whole thing. They want some babies. That's what they want right now, right? And especially my mom, right? And so my dad's all, just do, make sure it's right, make sure it's right. Very practical guy, and so it's sad that I've had all these experiences and I wasn't able to share it with them. That they, because I know they experienced a lot of these things through me, but I think the first time they've seen me physically interacting in a long time was with the video with the girl on the Temple Mount. Right? I mean, because they talk to me on Zoom, they see my face, whatever. But just me, and it's been years. And I remember when my mom came here, I was like, Mom, man, because it was hard when they first came out here. I was trying to get out. I was like, Yeshiva, this is like, how am I going to survive all this? And anyways, I'm walking through the march, going to this meeting, talking guys. But I remember talking to my mom when she came out here, and I was sitting with her. I was like, Mom, this is like, I was like, Mom, I feel like I'm doing time right now, right? Like, I feel like I'm locked up. Like I gotta, that I'm in this situation. Not that I've ever been arrested, but I'm saying that if there was such a feeling, I had it, right? And my mom was like, "It's the best type of time you could have." I was like, "Oh God!" And anyway, so the point is just saying that it's that duality, of your own personal perfection and your own personal perfection, but then also within the collective, you know, that you're still part of. Hold on, I'm just walking this. It's gonna be allowed for 1 second. So my phone's in my pocket, but like,
It's
go
okay.
ahead.
Thank you, Chief Rabbi. This has been very encouraging and super, just kind of just letting us know that this desire to share it has to come from that pure place. And I just thank you for just sharing, that information. It's very encouraging.
Yeah, and the thing is, that's a good point. The thing is, that's the key. That's the key. And that piece right there is the difference between people having super success in the spiritual journey versus being disappointed. I met people who disappointed me. Different people, even rabbis that have done things that I was like, really? Like, bro, you know? But the reality is they have nothing to do with my journey. These are just people I met on my way. My journey is with God. My journey is on receiving God's light and his technology and learning his wisdom and learning the wisdom that he's provided us to the sages. That is my that's what I count on. I don't count on any man, right? To get me anywhere, because as soon as you do that, God will make that man disappoint you, right? Because you're only supposed to serve him. And so that idea is just focusing on that element of your relationship, you receiving light to your soul, and that being the mechanism. And all these things are just tools to help you receive light for your soul. And then after you receive light for your soul, you're doing your role, which is bringing light to humanity. And as you bring light to humanity, you fulfill the purpose of creation. And that's your peace. Not how much money you made, not what your status is, not how other people see you. Just the fact, just the fact that you are fulfilling the purpose of creation. All right, so we'll continue this on this afternoon or later on for afternoon for you guys.